It made me think when I was sitting there, not only how beautiful these two wonderful spiritual beings are, but also what a gift imagination is. I think it sometimes gets underplayed to some degree. We don't realize, or at least I forget sometimes, that it's really the driving force of creativity. Nothing has ever been, including who I'm looking at right now, without that creative imagination that has brought us all here. Yeah. I was thinking this week on the 19th, two things I'm kind of into. One is anniversaries and also birthdays, because I feel like the birthdays are like New Year's Eve. You know, New Year's, it's your year, it's your birthday. And then the other one is anniversaries. And this week, we remembered on the 19th, 12 years ago, Patrick took off in that plane by himself to go start planting seeds for this thing called CSL Kaua'i. And I remember it. And I said, wow, a lot of imagining has been going on since that moment of getting off that plane. And I always say, I would love to say I got off that plane like Rocky Balboa. I'm going to take it down, but I always say, I kept thinking just before we landed, can't you just go around a couple more times? Because we had no idea, or at least I didn't have any idea that what I was landing into, did my research, but I just landed and said, we have this idea. And Rita stayed home and worked with my mom and got her settled in and got her job and did a lot of the packing up of the house. And we always say, those are beautiful times. And then I fractured my shoulder up in Princeville. We call it the fall of Princeville. I was by myself running out there, and I fell and fractured my wonderful shoulder. And I remember the day I committed to this island was the day that my mom was like, I think you better come home now. Of course. And Rita said, well, do you want to come home a little earlier? Because I was going to come home in June something. And I said, no, I am home. And that was the first moment that I stopped being so afraid of this endeavor and went full 100% in. It's interesting, our message today is what we resist. Oh, you've been there. Oh, yes. Oh, you have been there. And I just love that, what you resist, which makes so much sense, unless you're in it and it's not making any sense. Because you don't want to really look at what you resist, persists. And what's great about this is when I looked it up and it says, what we resist persists points to the paradox that resisting something often keeps it alive in our consciousness, whereas embracing or accepting it can lead to transformation and peace. Doesn't it make sense? Yeah, because the more and more I resist it and I say, oh my God, it lives so fully. That's why Joe Dispenza and many of the great mystics ask us to review our past, not go back and live in it. Because what happens is every time I tell the story, what happens? Our brain tells us, doesn't know the difference between reality and just make-believe or whatever we're doing. And I'm a firm believer that we make a lot of things up. We make a lot of stuff up when we're resisting and we're scared. We start making up a whole bunch of stuff in our mind, and it becomes so real, and you can feel it in your body. You can feel it, right? Until I go, what happens if I made up something else in my favor? Because usually when we're making stuff up, it's usually catastrophizing, or a little bit. Not anybody in this room, but other people out there, you should see what they're doing. You should see what they're doing. And I love Rumi. There was two quotes with him, and one was a little harsh. Rita had used it in her morning meditation. And I went, oh, that's a little harsh, but I'll get another one. I looked him up, and it had this. You were born with wings. You were not meant for crawling, so don't. And I had to add to it, because Rumi and I are like this. I had to add to it, you have wings. Learn to use them and fly. Learn to use them and fly. So what are we focusing on? Now, just take a moment for your own life. This isn't a participation with hands and all of that, but what are we really focusing on in our life? And I was thinking for myself about that things always need to be reinvented. Sometimes, like this center, for instance, is always being reinvented. It's in the middle of one now, of our ohana, feeling secure there, feeling safe there, but something's also urging it to be more, to spread those wings. Yeah, why would we be crawling? I used to say it with religion. There used to be the banquet table of life. And there were those waiting to see when we were all done eating so they could have whatever was left over. And I just know that we live in an incredible banquet of divine substance. Divine substance. And it's delicious. It's delicious if we let it be. So I have a process that I use. I call it, reframing. In my inner child work, I do reframing, reclaiming, and renaming. That lovely story, reframe. And people get it confused sometimes, so I'm going to unconfuse you. Reframing doesn't mean go back and make it all what it wasn't. It means go back and look at it with a new perspective. What do they say? The things we hear are just opinions. The things we see are just perspectives, depending upon who's seeing them and who's hearing them. And I think to myself how much the reframing has helped me, because I have gone back, especially with inner child work, and really looked at the situation again and went, oh, that was awful, but what did I gain from it? What could I take with me? And then I reclaim it. Reclaim it as something new. Reclaim it the way I want to choose to see it and feel it and live my life forward with it. And I give it a new title. I used to have the title, The Victimhood Time. And I wore it like a badge. Yep, should have been around my childhood. But then you can't really do that, because then everybody comes in and goes, really? You should hear what my childhood is. It's kind of like if something happens, you break your leg or something, and you go, my leg really hurts, and they go, you think that hurts? How about my shoulder? I got both of them going, or this, or my feet, and we start like, what do? We compare or see who has the better story. And my big thing in life right now is to write a story of my life that serves not only me, but serves everyone else. Our job here on a Sunday, as far as I'm concerned, is to inspire. Inspire. You got plenty of people telling you the other stuff. You got a whole world out there, baby. Have at it. We got people out there telling you what you're not going to be, what you could be, and it gets fire. That's why does resistance end up creating it? Because we put fire behind it. Do you know how much power is when you're starting to, I've complained with zest. And I've done it recently. And guess what? It doesn't feel good, and I'm not lying to myself. And when I get scared, what do? You know me. I go like this. I say, listen, you beautiful, beautiful, beautiful little boy, man, spiritual being. We got this. And then when I don't got this, there's other people that do, and I go to them and let them assist me. So we cannot leave this month without, this is Women's what? History Month. So I was guided to the most incredible, powerful woman in the world besides Rita. In my history, we all know Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Yes. And since I am so transparent, I'm going to put a disclaimer out. Ruth made errors in her life. Did you know that Ruth made mistakes in her life? To my shock. And I won't go to the depth, but I put it on Facebook, a little quote from her. And of course I got feedback. Do you remember when she blah, 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 blah? And I went, oh my God. So I wrote back, and I hardly ever do, and I said this: I'll agree with that particular mistake that could have been made, but I'll tell you something. She sure made a lot of ones that weren't a mistake. And I said, that's what we need to focus on. It was just like a light went off. What are we focusing on? We're focusing on the things that she did wonderful, especially in women's rights. And I had so much fun, and I wanted to share some with you. She was in the middle of an interview, and someone said, she said to the interviewer, I hear that you're a belligerent optimist. I hear you're a belligerent, and she said, me too. A belligerent optimist. And they said, well, what does that mean? Can you help us out? Tell the world, what is it? It means that there's a lot of stuff going on out there, that you'd want to get pretty belligerent about it. But she said, take it from me. I've been around a long time. And I watched it where women didn't have the right for anything. And I watched when I was a lawyer, when they wouldn't hire me, they said, oh, you'll be a clerk. Or they said, this isn't really a very good idea. You're taking a job away from a man. Ooh, see? Belligerent optimists. And so the optimistic part comes when you can look at all of the stuff that she's looking at through history. And she can still be optimistic enough to say, I don't know how the hell we're going to get through this one, but we will. Because we have proof throughout the history that it did work out. And she was talking about, I love this story, about, well, one of her quotes is, real change, enduring change happens one step at a time. And that's how she's able to stay optimistic, because she's not looking at the whole overwhelming picture of what was going on at that time. But she had this thing, it was called a dropped curtain. Has anybody ever heard of it? Dropped curtain was she went to the symphony, and she said, there are no women in the symphony. And the critic, she was talking to the critic, and he said, well, that's because you can tell the difference when a woman plays a piano and a man plays a piano. And she said, interesting. So what she did was the critic, she was talking about the critic came, and they said, well, let's test it out, shall we? We're going to drop the curtain, and we're going to bring in musicians, kind of like our voice today. And you're going to sit out there, and we're going to blindfold you too, just in case they cheated. And they go down, and the woman started playing behind them, men started, and they went back. He was so confused because he couldn't tell the difference of which one was a man. So it proved his lovely theory was not so good. So then they started having these, what they call blind auditions. That is so that you don't look at the appearances. You're only looking for what you're hearing. And just think, let's take that into everything. I was thinking to myself, how interesting it would be to be constantly in a blind audition when you're trying to And then I even went deeper. I went, oh, someone who doesn't have their sight. They can really see who you are. They can really see you because they feel you. And that incredible feeling of behind the curtain, someone is giving of themselves and you don't know if they're black, white, gay, whatever labels you want. You don't know any of that. You don't know the color of the hair. You don't know the person that looks like your ex that you can't possibly hire because they look like your ex. We had a practitioner went into training and we went to do our tests and he's really good and they didn't pass him. Then as we found out through the secret covenants, we found out that he looked a lot like her ex-husband. And sometimes you cannot get past that. Somebody walks in, right? And you go, I don't know what it is about them. Your ex. It's always the ex. I don't even care if you have one. Just blame them. Blame them. And so she had that, and and the belligerent optimist she really loved. She said that it was interesting for her. She could be optimistic because she has watched what shouldn't have been become a reality for her. And I'm asking all of us now, inviting all of us to look at it differently, look at our lives differently, look at people differently. I know it's not always, and if you feel like you can't really subjectively do it, let's carry a curtain around with us. And we'll say, tell me how you're really feeling. What a great idea though, right? Right? So this is what she said about her head always. She said she could never stop thinking about, the next brief that she had to do or the next cause that she was working with. And she said this, music is the one time when my head isn't filled with briefs and opinions. All that is put on a shelf and I just enjoy. And so how I look at this is that there's a lot going on, and not just in the world, in your own personal lives, right? We don't wake up in the morning, well, some did until I took a news fast, and boy, I lost so many pounds from stopping. Oh, that news fast is just great. And so I started really focusing on, where am I? Where am I? What is mine to do? What is mine to be? And to take these gifts that I've been given and use them. It can be really overwhelming. Yesterday, we had one of those overwhelming moments when I started structuring, like, let's look at the next 3 years and develop a plan. And usually that's really exciting. Until we started like going, yeah, and then this, and then this. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, and then what about that program, this program, this program? And then all of a sudden I told Rita, I said, I'm not in joy anymore. Now I'm stressed. And I thought, how do I change that? Pick one thing. One thing. And when you're a person who births ideas like crazy, Rita and I spent our whole 25 years birthing ideas. And we have a big family. To take it and say, what brings me joy? I'm really asking and inviting us now in our lives to go, does that give me joy? And guess what? You'll know immediately. Because we're programmed to go, oh, that feels really good. I'm on it. And then that feels stressful, and then the shoulders get all tight, and then you're walking around and go, it's not yours to do. So we started last week with the caterpillar, so here it is. Just when the caterpillar thought its life was over, what did it do? It became a butterfly. And then you were born with wings. Use them, take flight, and soar. Namaste.